Jack of all trades towers are not my favorite. They are usually just boring all-around options without any interesting nature mechanics, not to mention the difficulty of balancing them when multiple towers of this class are present, as they are all meant to do the same thing. TTS however decided to add yet another JoaT tower, Operator. This is an evolution of a scout that costs 15,000 coins and 4500 gems, making it more expensive than most towers in the game. Unfortunately, not many people really use this tower aside from initially gaining XP for it, and today we will discuss why Operator is a failure in tower design. Let's start off with discussing why this tower is unused and not worth its price. First we got early game, and it is not looking good. In comparison to Golden Scout, Operator heavily uses out of cost efficiency, which is incredibly important for an early game tower. The situation is better with other meta early game options, but still not something you would expect from such an expensive tower. Operator has a decent range and gets hidden detection at level 1, which comes handy in early game, as well as flying detection at level 3. The issue is that this tower is pretty slow. Taking Golden Scout for example, it can clear early waves much faster than Operator due to superior cost efficiency. This makes Golden Scout a better early game option because in early waves, you generally just care to move it as fast as possible, aka speedrun, which Operator is bad at. Other early options perform about as well as Operator, so there is yet again no reason to even use him when you have other towers that fill his role with the same success for cheaper price. But what about Hardcore and Voidcore? Operator can be used here, but he is still majorly ignored. This is due to Hardcore giving a low amount of cash, which by itself already makes early game towers a lot worse. But more importantly, Operator does not possess weed detection. This is crucial as both game modes introduce weed enemies very early, and so you want an early game tower to handle both them and flying enemies, who also come early. Guess what tower has all three detections early on? Engineer. She's undoubtedly the better option than Operator for early game. Overall, Operator is not practical in Hardcore and Voidcore for early game either, because Engineer is just better. Okay, so what can Operator offer for mid game? Well, nothing. Okay, almost nothing, but we will talk about that later. The problem with mid-game is that this niche is extremely oversaturated, like half of the towers in the game work for mid-game. In the case of towers similar to Operator, we got Golden Soldier, Engineer, Golden Crook Boss, Golden Minigunner, even Golden Scout still. All of them once again generally perform around the same or outperform Operator, who just has average stats, which is not impressive at all. I have to give him credit to flying detection, which may make you argue that he is more convenient as you don't need to bring an anti-flying option, until you realize that multiple mid-game options, including Golden Soldier who Operator ripped off, also have it. And yes, they do perform on the same level as Operator, or maybe even better. Okay, his mid-game is kind of a disaster, so let's talk about the late game instead. Except he does not have a late game. Operator, similarly to a couple others, is an early to mid-game tower, and despite having 6 levels, he does not perform well in late game, as his damage falls off way too much. So we are not going to talk about it. What we can talk about is his passive, that is supposedly should make him strong, and is the reason why this tower is so expensive. Operator has 2 passives. The first passive is called Coordination, and is unlocked at level 2. Basically, operators place close to each other, and I mean very close due to how tiny the range of the passive is, all gain a grand total of plus 5% damage, which does not even change its damage at its level, due to 3 damage that Operator deals at level 2 still by 3, even with 5% bonus damage applied, as it is just rounded down as the game cannot do decimal damage. But hope is not lost, as the bonus damage can actually stack. Practically, you can place around 10 operators with this passive active, with the best placement possible, which turns this passive into 50% damage boost, which is Novi token. Now he can deal 4 damage. Okay, it does get better on later levels, and on final levels the buff gets increased to 7.5% per operator, making maximum possible to be 75% for a couple operators at most. The rest will get a less damage buff due to not being in perfect spots. This does make Operator way better in mid-game specifically, because the damage buff does not really impact it in early, as it does not do much damage yet. However, even with the damage buff, it is only marginally better than its competition at best, Not to mention that you need a perfect placement for that to work, which makes you ask the question, why use the operator, spam them and try to achieve the perfect spot? Well, you can just use something like Golden Scout, who does much better early game and still solid in mid game even if operator may have the right edge. This is the maximum demand for minimum reward. To make it even worse, operator is also better and truer in quad because of that, as he will just fill up all the good spots with operators to achieve its passive, making your teammates being unable to use them to place towers like accelerators and engineers in optimal spots, because you fill them with dumb as operators, thus sabotaging the game. Alright, so this passive, while attempts to help out operator, just makes it an uncomfortable tower to use, while not delivering worse results. His other passive unfortunately is even worse. It makes operators that are located within the range being able to attack enemies in any of the operator's range. This sounds good on paper until you realize that it sabotages its first passive, which requires operators to be placed together, while this one needs them to be spread out to achieve maximum effect. Not only that, but the range is generally not the problem in TDS, especially if you have enhanced optics maxed out. Operator itself also has a respectable range, so this set is just not needed most of the time. Overall, neither of the operator's passive help him stand out from his competition, as in the end, it is still just a basic early to mid game tower that is essentially just ripping off Golden Soldier. This brings me to my final point. This tower is a ripoff. What is not a ripoff, however, is cracking the subscribe button. Both Operator and Golden Soldier have a boost mechanic. Both use it on later levels to tune into militant clones. Both are aimed at early and mid game. What's the point? Why did the dev just copy and paste the same tower, nerfed it and added a passive, so when utilized, it is stronger than the original tower? Operator brings nothing new to the table, as mentioned multiple times already. This is just yet another jack of all trades militant type tower that is just doomed by fate to be outclassed by Engineer and Golden Scout. Why would you pay 15,000 coins and 4500 gems for this, let alone grind XP for ages? Just use Golden Scout or even Brawl for Owing and then just use Engineer for the rest. Engineer costs less than Operator, by the way. This tower has no niche. The only two ways to make people use him is to either buff him heavily or nerf all other options. And both will result in everyone just using Operator and forgetting about Golden Soldier, Scout, etc. Which is a terrible spot to be in. His niche overlaps with so many towers, and he is at core such a simplistic tower that balancing him will be a nightmare unless they completely rework him. This is exactly why Operator is a failure in tower design. Thanks for watching and I will see you next time.